Good morning, everybody. We are going to be starting a new unit in English today. We're going to be starting to look at Greek myths and one Greek myth in particular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some slides, and I want you to see if you can guess what the Greek myth is. Some of you are familiar with some of the Greek myths, some of you are not so much, so don't worry if you're not, because I'm going to tell you the story later. But just for those of you that do, let's see if you know what the Greek myth is. So here's the first clue. So these are just the instructions here. Look at the following pictures, one at a time. What Greek myth do you think they're representing? So here is the first clue. Okay, looks like a ball of yarn. Now, some of you might have it straight away from that if you know your Greek myths. Here's the next clue. The next clue seems to be like a blueprint of some sort of building. I can definitely see in there some stairs. Here, can you see here? There's some stairs. So it seems to be quite a large building. Maybe, I don't know. It looks quite an odd building, doesn't it? Like lots of corridors going off in all different directions. There seem to be lots of long, thin walls. I wonder why that is. Oh, this is interesting. So we've got some sort of weapon here. What do you think it looks like? What kind of weapon is it? Looks to me like maybe an axe. Maybe a double-headed axe, possibly? Not sure. What do you think? Here's a written clue. The ancient Greek word Labyrinth means double-headed axe. We've just seen one of those, haven't we? And Labyrinth means house of the double-headed axe. That's interesting. So that weapon we've just seen seems like it's called a labyrinth, maybe. And it's telling us for some reason that the house of the double-headed axe, so maybe the house named after that axe, is called a labyrinth. Now that word sounds familiar. I wonder if you've heard that word before and where you might have heard that word. We've got another map here, but this is an outside map. Now it looks like all that blue stuff is the sea. Now I can see some of those 6,000 Greek islands there, but there's the largest of the islands labelled at the bottom. Can you see Crete? And in Crete is Knossos, the city of Knossos is labelled. I can also see Athens, Marathon, Sparta. Now I know some of these places don't exist anymore. Sparta doesn't exist anymore, so that must mean this is an ancient map of Greece. Delphi. Yes, I recognise a lot of these. Olympia, recognise a lot of those names. But it looks like Crete is the biggest, most important thing in this story because it's labelled bigger than the others, isn't it? Now we've got some kind of fresco here. Fresco is like a wall painting. I can see people and a bull, maybe. Yeah, not sure. Okay. Oh, now this is a modern picture, isn't it? But it looks like ruins here. What do you think? Do you think it's definitely a modern photograph, an aerial view looking down? I wonder what it's of. We've got an ivory carving here, and it tells us that this is from the Palace of Knossos in Crete, and it's a bull leaper. We had a bull leaper in one of those pictures. Do you remember in that fresco? Some coins here. These coins are from Knossos. I keep hearing that city. Do you remember it was on the island of Crete, depicting the Minotaur Labyrinth. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Do you think you can guess which myth it is yet? Can you see the labyrinth in the coin? Now this is interesting. I'm not quite sure what this is showing. I can see here that we've got some carvings. Let me just point them out to you. I can see we've got some carvings up the top here. I wonder what that's of. It looks a bit like a bow, doesn't it? What do you think that might be a carving of? Are they all the same? They look a bit like bows. Not sure. And here, another modern day picture. You can tell by the way the lady's dressed and that it's a photograph. So a modern day picture of the ruins at Knossos. So these must be the ruins of something. Knossos we now know is in Crete. I wonder what they're the ruins of. Okay, this page tells us a bit more about what we found. So let's have a look. That last one we saw is actually at the top here, the remains of the palace at Knossos on Crete, the scene of the encounter, here we go, between Theseus and the Minotaur. Did you get it? I bet you did. Theseus and the Minotaur, that's the myth we're looking at. The next one down was a plan of the palace on Knossos, the one that this photo is of above, but it's in the form of a maze. Now, the palace wasn't actually in a maze, but they've drawn it very cleverly to look like a maze. The next one we've got down is that double-headed axe, or the labber, as we've learnt, similar to the one used in the story. The next one down is that writing, which is in the top right-hand corner, if you can see it. And it says the ancient Greek word labyrinth means double-headed axe. Now that's spelt differently, isn't it, in two different places? I wonder if that's just a mistake or whether it is spelt differently, because a lot of the time these words are translated and you do get different spellings. That'll be interesting. I might try and find that out. One of you guys can find it out for me. So an explanation as to the link between the axe and the labyrinth. So that link is that the double-headed axe was called the Labyrinth, and the labyrinth means house of the double-headed axe. So that's how the maze got its name. It was named after the axe. That's really interesting. Then we have the map showing the island of Crete where the story took place and showing where the palace was. And it's a real place. So that is a real palace, as we can see in that picture up in the top corner. Also, it shows how it relates to the Greek mainland and to Athens, especially, as we know that's the capital city. Next down, we've got the fresco showing bull vaulting. Now, vaulting is jumping, so that must be about jumping over bulls. And it shows how important these animals were to Minoan culture. So a bull was a really important animal, which is why it's used in the myth. The Minotaur, for those of you who don't know, who was half human, half bull. Then we have an aerial view of the palace building. So this aerial view is actually the view. So this view here is actually the view that we get of the here. It's from above here. Coins showing Ariadne in the maze. You can just about see those. I'm hiding them, aren't I? And you can see Ariadne. Now, she is the princess that's going to appear in our story. And the maze, the labyrinth, is on the reverse. And then this picture, which you're going to see another close-up in a minute, so don't worry that you can't see it underneath me. This is the labber. Again, it's spelt differently, isn't it? Two-headed axe carved in stone. So that thing we thought might have been a bow was actually the two-headed axe. And that's dated to the time of the story. That's really interesting. So this isn't a real story because it's a myth. Myths are not real. However, it does have a time period. It does have a period when people believed it happened. The ancient Greeks believed that it was part of their ancient history, and this stone carving is dated to that time. Let's have another closer look at the stone carving. There it is. So now you can see that it is a two-headed axe there. How many of you worked it out? Be honest. Did you think it was a bow like I did, or did you think it was a two-headed axe? Isn't it amazing that that still exists? Okay, so now we know this is the story of Thesis and the Minotaur. We're going to hear two versions of that story. The first one I'm going to take you through, I'm going to read with you, but then I'm going to leave you to listen to another version, and I'll explain that when we get to it. So let's have a look at version 1. Okay, now this is quite a long story, so I'm going to read it to you, and I just want you to sit back and enjoy. King Minos of Crete was a powerful man, feared by the rulers of the lands around him. When he demanded goods or men for his great armies, they felt they had to agree. When he demanded they sent tributes to honour him, they sent them without question. It was the only way they could stop him going to war with them. But his demands on Athens became too much for them to bear. King Minos had a great palace built for himself. Inside this palace, Minos built a giant maze, a labyrinth, and at the centre of the maze he kept a terrifying creature, the Minotaur. Now this was no ordinary animal, it was a monster, half man and half bull. Now just to stop for a second, there's actually a lot more to this story than there is on this page. So for example, we know that the person that designed the maze was a man called Daedalus, and he was an inventor. He had a son called Icarus, and that's another story that you might have heard of. So he was the one that designed the labyrinth. We also know, we do know the origins of the Minotaur as well, but that's not one we're going to go into today. So there is a lot more to this story than we're hearing. Let's carry on though. It was powerful and savage, and it loved to eat the flesh of humans who had been shut into the labyrinth by King Minos. They would wander through the maze, completely lost, until at last they came face to face with the Minotaur. Not a great way to die, really. As for Athens, Minos demanded that every year the king send him 7 young men and 7 young women. Why do we send these people to Crete every year? Thesis asked his father, the king of Athens. And why is it that none of them ever return? Because if we did not send them, Minos would wage war on us, and it is a war that we would not win, said King Aegeus. And they do not return because they do not go to Crete as slaves. They go as food for the Minotaur. Father, this is terrible, shouted Theseus. We cannot let this go on. We cannot sacrifice any more of our young citizens to this tyrant. When it is time to send the next tribute, I will go as one of them, and I vow that this is the last time the Minotaur will be fed with the flesh of any of our people. Try as he might, his father could not persuade him to change his mind. Aegeus reminded him that every year other young men had sworn to slay this terrible beast, and they had never been seen again. Theseus insisted that he understood the dangers, but would succeed. I will return to you, father, cried Theseus as the ship left the harbour wall, and you will be proud of your son. Then I wish you good luck, my son, cried his father. I shall keep watch for you every day. If you are successful, take down these black sails and replace them with white ones. That way I will know you are coming home safe to me. So the king would see the sails in the distance and know that if they're white, Theseus had killed the Minotaur and was coming back safe. As the ship docked in Crete, King Minos himself came down to inspect the prisoners from Athens. He enjoyed the chance to taunt the Athenians and to humiliate them even further. Is this all your king has to offer this year? He jeered. Such puny creatures, hardly even a snack for the mighty creature within the labyrinth. Anyway, let's get on with it. I am not a hard-hearted man, so I will let you choose which one goes first into the Minotaur's den. Who is it to be? Theseus stepped forward. I will go first. I am Theseus, Prince of Athens, and I do not fear what is in the walls of your maze. Those are brave words for one so young and feeble, but the Minotaur will soon have you between its horns. Guards, open the labyrinth and send him in. Standing behind the king, listening, was his daughter Ariadne. From the moment she set eyes on Theseus, Ariadne fell in love with him. As she listened to her father goading and taunting the young prince, she decided that she would help him. As she entered the labyrinth and the guards walked away, she called softly to him. Theseus, take this, she whispered. Even if you kill the Minotaur, you will never find your way out again. She threw him a great ball of string, and he tied one end of it to the entrance. He smiled at her, turned and began to make his way into the maze, the string playing out behind him as he went. Theseus walked carefully through the dark, foul-smelling passages of the labyrinth, expecting at any moment to come face to face with the creature. He did not have long to wait. Turning a corner, with his hands held out in front of him, feeling his way, he suddenly touched what felt like a huge, bony horn. In an instant, his world turned upside down, quite literally. He was picked up between the Minotaur's horns and tossed high into the air. When he landed on the hard, cold stone, he felt the animal's huge hooves come down on his chest. Every last breath seemed to be knocked out of him, and as he struggled to stay alive in the darkness, But Theseus was no ordinary man. He was the son of a king. He was brave and he was stubborn. As the Minotaur bellowed in his ear and grabbed him with its hairy arms, Theseus found a strength which he did not know he possessed. He grabbed the animal's huge horns and kept on twisting the great head from side to side. As the animal grew weak, Theseus gave one almighty tug on the head, turning it almost right round. The creature's neck snapped. It gurgled its last breath and fell to the floor with an enormous thud. It was over. He had done it. The Minotaur was dead. All he had to do was make his way out of... And then he realised the awful truth. In the struggle, he had let go of the string, his lifeline. Theseus felt all over the floor in the pitch darkness and kept thinking he had found it, only to realise all he had was a long, wiry hair from the Minotaur. Despair set in, and Theseus wondered if this was where his life would end, down in the dark, all alone, next to the stinking body. Then his hand brushed a piece of string, and with a whoop of delight he knew he'd found the thread which would lead him back out. As he neared the entrance of the labyrinth, darkness began to fade, and he made out the figure of Ariadne waiting for his return. "You must take me back to Athens with you," she cried. "My father will kill me when he finds out I've helped you." "But of course you must come with us," said Theseus. "It would be cruel to leave you here." Quickly and quietly they unfurled the great black sails of their ship and headed for home. "I cannot believe how my life has changed," said Ariadne, as they sailed across the calm seas towards Athens. "To think that I am free of my cruel father, and that I will soon be married to a great prince." Sounds like there's going to be a happy ending, doesn't it? Shall we see? "Married?" said Theseus. Yeah, oh yeah, that will be wonderful." But in truth, Theseus did not really find her attractive. So when their ship docked at an island on their way home to collect fresh water, Theseus sent Ariadne off to find bread and fruit. The moment she was gone, he set sail and left her on the island. Now you might think that this was a bad way to reward someone who had helped him and saved him from certain death. The gods clearly thought the same thing, for they had a further horror in store for him as punishment for his ungrateful treatment of the young girl. In his haste to get away, Theseus forgot to change his sails to white. King Aegeus, waiting on the headland, saw the ship approaching with its black sails flying in the wind. "My son has failed, and he is dead," he cried, and in despair he flung himself from the cliff into the raging waters below. From that day on, the sea was named in memory of Theseus's father, and to this day it is known as the Aegean Sea. Okay, so not the happy ending we thought the story might have. Theseus was not quite the hero he should have been and just left Ariadne on the island. And so the gods punished him by making him forget to change the sails. So poor old King Aegeus thought he died. He saw the black sails in the distance and thought he died. Okay, so that's one version of the story. What you're going to do in a second is you're going to listen to another version of the story. And there's a link here, but I'm not sure you can use this as it's part of the video. So what I'm going to do is also link this to the lesson. So you'll need to go into Google Classroom and click on the link there. And it's an audio version of the story. So it's just one to listen to. However, there is on the website, if you want to follow along, there's a transcript. And it's more of a play version. So it's a BBC radio version that I would just want you to listen to. It's about 15 minutes, but you can read along with the transcript if you click on it and open it up. But open it in a different tab, because otherwise it will take you, that whole page will go straight to the transcript. So you'll need to open it into another tab. You will notice on this version that there are slight differences. Why do you think there will be slight differences? Have a think for a second. Actually, if we were in class, we would listen or read lots of versions of the Thesis and the Minotaur. And the reason they are all different is because for hundreds of years, this story was told orally. It was passed down from mother, father to son or daughter orally. It wasn't written down. It was just told as stories. And so lots of the versions changed slightly. and there were always details that weren't quite the same. And also, as we've already said, some parts were missed out, like the fact that Daedalus designed the Labyrinth and why, and where the Minotaur came from, why he was a Minotaur. So lots of details have been missed out of this version, but also things have been changed, and that's because it was told orally. It's like Chinese whispers. So every time it gets told, something might have altered very, very slightly, and that might give you a totally different version of the story. So although it's generally always the same, there might be slight differences in the story you're about to hear, and that's not surprising because of that oral tradition. So we are going to finish now. Well done for listening. And all I want you to do now is to just go and listen to that other version. If you're not going to follow along with the transcript, what you could do is have a piece of paper in front of you and just be doodling sketches that make you think of it. Maybe a sketch of the Minotaur, the Labyrinth, or just write notes of what happens in the story. So that's something you could do while you're listening. Okay, but I just want you to go away now, find that link and listen to another version of the story. So well done for today. That's it. That's all I want you to do. Just listen to those two versions, and we're going to talk more about it tomorrow. Well done, everybody.